She said she'd never leave, and in that moment, she meant it. But her instincts weren't finished evolving. Schopenhauer didn't hate women. He just refused to mistake emotion for essence. You weren't betrayed by her words. You were betrayed by your belief that biology keeps promises. She doesn't betray you. Her instincts do, and nature never apologizes. You weren't cheated. You were corrected. You thought she chose to hurt you, but that's not what happened. She didn't betray you out of cruelty. She just obeyed something older than choice. That's what you missed. Her instincts made the decision long before her mouth spoke it, and you mistook her silence for stability. You mistook her consistency for commitment. But nature doesn't care about your definitions. She didn't leave because of one bad moment. She left because over time her subconscious sensed a shift in power, in polarity, in possibility, and that shift made her retreat without needing to understand why. Because she doesn't operate on reason, she operates on reaction. Schopenhauer warned you. He said women follow their nature with more precision than men follow their principles, not because they're calculating, but because they're designed to adapt, not to anchor. What you felt as betrayal was simply her instincts recalibrating. That's why it felt so sudden, so senseless, so surgical, because she didn't debate it. She responded to it. You were trying to hold on to someone you thought was real, but you weren't holding her. You were holding a projection, a version of her that only existed in your hope. That's the true pain, not that she left, but that everything you thought she was died with her decision. You weren't cheated. You were corrected, and that correction felt like punishment, but it was actually protection, because the longer you lived inside that illusion, the more you delayed your own awakening. You needed to bleed, not because you deserved pain, but because nothing else would make you question the lie. You thought love was enough. You thought effort would earn permanence, but biology doesn't reward effort. It rewards value, perceived, felt, instinctive, not logical, not fair, and if her perception shifts even slightly, her loyalty will evaporate like it was never there. Not because she's heartless, but because she's following something deeper than attachment. This is the beginning of male vision, when the story collapses, when the mask falls off, when you stop asking why she changed and start asking why you believed she wouldn't. Pain isn't the problem. It's the turning point. It's the sharp edge that splits your life in two, before clarity and after. You didn't lose her. You lost your illusion of her, and that, brother, is the first true win. She was loyal to her needs, not you. You keep asking why she changed, why her eyes stopped lighting up, why the warmth in her voice went cold, but you're asking the wrong questions. She didn't change. She returned to herself, because her loyalty was never to you. It was to how she felt around you. That's the truth no one teaches you. Her love was real, as long as it met her needs, not in a selfish, calculated way, but in a survival-driven, subconscious way. Women don't stay where they feel uncertain. They stay where their instincts whisper, this man protects something vital. And when that signal fades, whether through your weakness, stagnation, or her own inner chaos, she won't ask for permission. She'll shift, withdraw, detach, not because she wants to hurt you, but because she needs to preserve herself. Schopenhauer saw it clearly. Women are not monuments. They are moments. They exist in the now. They adapt to the current of emotional certainty. And once that current weakens, their allegiance disappears with it. You thought chemistry was commitment, but chemistry is just instinct on fire. Commitment is a man's dream. The idea that love, once declared, becomes permanent. But for her, permanence is a feeling, not a vow. You gave her stability. She stayed. You gave her attention. She bloomed. But the second she felt emotionally unsafe, unseen, or unstimulated, even for reasons she couldn't explain, her mind began the exit long before her feet walked out the door. She didn't stay for you. She stayed for how she felt around you. And the second that feeling faded, so did her investment. That's not betrayal. That's nature. And unless you understand that, you'll keep chasing ghosts. Women who promised forever, but were only ever there for as long as it served them. It sounds harsh, but it's liberating, because now you stop relying on her words and start watching her patterns. Now you stop expecting unconditional loyalty and start leading with undeniable presence. She was loyal, but only to her needs. And when her instincts whispered, "This no longer feeds me," she left, without apology, without warning, without looking back. The myth of the good woman keeps you weak. You thought she was different, not like the others, more loyal, more grounded, more loving, but you didn't fall for her. You fell for your idea of her. You called her a good woman, but what does that mean? Good for what? For your loneliness, your fantasy, your need to believe that somewhere one woman would finally prove the others wrong? Good isn't a truth. It's a filter, a projection of what you want her to be, not who she actually is. And when you project, you stop perceiving. You ignore red flags. You rewrite her contradictions. You justify behavior that would disgust you in any other context. Why? Because the good woman myth feels safer than admitting you don't really know what's behind her smile. Schopenhauer knew the danger of idealization. He wrote that men love with ideals. They elevate women to pedestals of virtue, loyalty, and softness. But women don't operate in ideals. They operate in opportunity. A woman's affection isn't proof of moral excellence. It's a response to conditions. And when those conditions shift, so does her behavior. Not because she's malicious, but because her instincts are loyal to her context, not your character. You wanted her to be loyal like you were. You thought if you showed up, stayed solid, stayed loving, she would too. But nature doesn't work on fairness. It works on fitness, emotional, social, psychological fitness. And the moment she perceives that you're no longer the strongest option for her fulfillment, whether emotionally or otherwise, her biology pulls away. You can't outlove instinct. You can't negotiate with evolution. You can't logic your way into permanence. What you called betrayal was her returning to what her nervous system trusted more than your promises, its own calibration for survival. But because you built her image out of dreams, not data, you refused to see it coming. You thought her sweetness meant safety. You thought her loyalty was unconditional. You thought love changed nature. It doesn't. It only delays it. You're not broken because she left. You're broken because the dream died. The fantasy you clung to, the one that told you she's not like the rest, shattered in your hands. And that illusion hurt more than the woman ever could. She wasn't a lie. Your dream of her was. And that dream kept you blind. It kept you forgiving what should have been questioned. It kept you investing in a story that was never written by her. It was written by you. So stop calling her good just because she fit your script. Start seeing her for what she is. Not evil, not angelic, but adaptive, responsive, primal. This isn't about hatred, it's about clarity. And clarity is what separates the man who gets used from the man who understands. Her nature tests. Your awareness protects. You think she's testing you because she wants to push you away, because she's angry, irrational, impossible. But that's not why she's doing it. She tests to find something, not to destroy you, but to uncover if there's anything real behind your image. She wants to know if the strength you show is performance or presence, because every man can speak like a rock until pressure is applied. Then the cracks appear. Her chaos isn't a mistake. It's her way of feeling out your structure, of finding your center, or watching you collapse into reaction. And the man who doesn't understand this takes it all personally. He thinks her shifting moods are a reflection of his failure. He tries to fix her feelings. He tiptoes. He explains. He apologizes for things he didn't even do, but he doesn't realize. That's what fails the test. Schopenhauer warned that the man who suffers from the feminine nature is the man who doesn't understand it. He absorbs her emotion like it's his responsibility. He confuses her storm with his shame. But nature doesn't reward absorption. It rewards awareness. She doesn't want your emotional surrender. She wants your spiritual weight. She wants to know, can you hold still while she moves? Can you stay grounded when she's spinning? Not because she wants chaos, but because chaos is how she confirms strength. A woman will press against your emotional structure not because she wants to break it, but because she needs to feel it. And when you flinch, explain, beg, or collapse, you fail. Not because you were too emotional, but because your emotions were not disciplined. Discipline is the highest form of masculine love. Not control, not suppression, but the ability to hold the line even when everything around you is begging you to fall. You don't lead her by overpowering her. You lead by not being overwhelmed by her. She doesn't need a man who fights her. She needs a man she can't knock off center. That's safety to her. That's attraction. That's the test. And when you pass it, when you stop reacting to every flicker in her energy and start seeing through it, that's when she relaxes. That's when she softens. That's when she respects you, not for what you say, but for what you can hold. The man who sees her clearly is the only man she can't control, because he doesn't fall for the performance. He watches her nature play out like weather, never resisting it, never personalizing it, just remaining still through the storm. And when she realizes that her storm can't move you, that you're not here to pass her tests, you're here to see them, you stop being her puppet. You become her mirror. And in that mirror, she finally sees the man she can't manipulate, but wants to follow. What feels like betrayal is nature, realigning itself. You keep calling it betrayal, but betrayal requires intention, and what happened wasn't calculated. It was instinctual. She didn't sit down and plan how to hurt you. She didn't strategize your collapse. She followed something deeper, older than logic, older than love. Her leaving wasn't evil. It was entropy. It was nature realigning itself, with or without your permission. What you called a relationship was, in truth, a temporary intersection of biology, timing, and perceived value. When any of those elements shift, the connection begins to dissolve, not because someone did something wrong, but because nature no longer sees purpose in the bond. And nature is brutal in its efficiency. It doesn't cling, it doesn't mourn, it just moves forward. You keep looking for meaning in her absence, but sometimes the only meaning is this: she no longer felt it, and her body responded before her mind could explain it. You weren't betrayed, you were outdated. Your energy, your presence, your leadership, something in you became still, predictable, or uninspiring, and she felt that stillness as a threat to her own aliveness. She didn't leave because she stopped loving you. She left because her instincts told her, this man no longer makes me feel what I need to feel to stay alive inside. And that message, once received, overrides every vow, every plan, every memory. That's not betrayal, that's biology. Schopenhauer never saw relationships as forever. He saw them as fragile alliances between instincts, unstable by design, held together not by emotional promises, but by unconscious fulfillment of needs. You assumed her loyalty was rooted in love, but it was rooted in alignment, and alignment shifts. What once felt magnetic becomes familiar. What once made her glow begins to feel like routine. And when that feeling settles in, she starts to pull away, not to punish you, but to preserve herself. The tragedy is not that she left. The tragedy is that you were still clinging to an idea that nature had already abandoned. Everything decays, even love, especially love without depth, without growth, without polarity. So when she left, it wasn't because she wanted to hurt you. It was because the ecosystem between you had collapsed and her instincts were screaming to escape the emotional drought. You were waiting for her to come back, but she had already left, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, long before she packed her things. And in that gap between her presence and her truth, you stayed blind. You thought she was still yours, but the bond had already been severed, cut not by cruelty, but by an invisible shift inside her body that you couldn't see, because you were still looking at her like she was the same girl who promised to stay. You weren't destroyed by her actions. You were destroyed by your resistance to reality, by your refusal to accept that what feels like betrayal is often just nature choosing efficiency over emotion. And if you don't understand this, you'll keep punishing yourself for things you never controlled. You'll keep thinking, if I had just done more, if I had just said the right thing, if I had just held on tighter. But the truth is, you were supposed to be let go of, not because you were weak, but because you stopped evolving in her eyes. And nature doesn't wait for the stagnant, it replaces them. That's the brutality, but also the beauty, because now you see, now you know that loyalty is conditional, and when instinct moves on, even loyalty evaporates. So stop asking why she left. Start asking why you kept pretending she wouldn't. Let that question become your new mirror, not so you can fix the past, but so you never again mistake emotional comfort for permanence. Detach from the illusion, not the experience. Most men don't heal because they stay angry, not at her, but at the collapse of the fantasy they built around her. You didn't just lose a woman, you lost a dream, one that said, she sees me, she completes me, she'll never leave. But here's the truth, she was never meant to complete you. She was meant to awaken you, and you missed the lesson by turning her into the villain. You think hating her will protect you, but hate is just another form of attachment. It keeps the fantasy alive, just painted darker. You haven't moved on. You've just switched the mask you put on her face. You need to stop asking whether she was real. She was. The feelings were real. The moments were real. But the meaning you gave them, that was yours. And that's what has to die now. Because if you don't bury the illusion, it will keep resurrecting in every woman you meet. Different face. Same story, same wound. Schopenhauer wasn't cruel when he wrote about women. He was clear. He saw that the problem wasn't the feminine. It was the man who refused to see the feminine without distortion. He said men are not destroyed by women. They're destroyed by their fantasies of women. You built an ideal around her because it made the world feel safe. It told you that love had logic, that affection meant permanence, that if you showed up with enough sincerity, she'd stay forever. But that's not how nature works. Nature isn't interested in your emotional expectations. It's not interested in fairness. It operates on instinct, movement, and timing. So when her instinct shifted, you mistook that as betrayal. But it wasn't betrayal. It was feedback. It was the collapse of a structure that was only ever real in your mind. The mature man doesn't vilify women. He outgrows the story that made them divine. He doesn't become cold. He becomes conscious. He learns to separate the experience from the interpretation. He learns to study what happened without rewriting it through the lens of ego. She was not evil. She was not pure. She was human, driven by forces she herself may never fully understand. And your job isn't to decode her every move. It's to ask why you gave her the power to destroy you in the first place. Don't hate her, see her, study her, study the dynamic, study yourself in that dynamic, because love isn't weakness. Unconscious love is. Love that expects reward. Love that demands certainty. Love that forgets to evolve. What you're feeling now is not punishment. It's clarity with a knife in its hand. It's truth forcing you to separate what was from what you wanted it to be. Detachment isn't distance, it's depth. It's not about avoiding intimacy, it's about refusing to lose yourself inside of it. You still have a heart. You just no longer place it in hands that haven't earned it. You still love, but your love is no longer a sacrifice of your vision. You still feel, but your feelings no longer hijack your structure, because now you know anyone who can destabilize your inner world with their absence was never love. They were a lesson. Let that lesson refine you, not into a colder man, but a more sovereign one. You no longer need to be understood by her. You only need to be unshakable in yourself. That's the real detachment. Not walking away from women, but walking away from the illusion that they were ever supposed to fix what you refuse to face. Freedom begins when fantasy dies. You thought losing her meant losing everything, but now you're starting to see it wasn't her you lost. It was the story, the fantasy you built around her, the one that said she'll stay if I'm good enough, the one that whispered this time. It's different, but the moment that fantasy died, so did your blindness. Her leaving was never the collapse, it was the clarity. It tore down the emotional scaffolding you built to protect yourself from truth, the truth that you were still handing over your worth, hoping she'd hold it steady. She didn't betray you. She revealed you. She exposed the part of you still waiting to be saved, still begging to be chosen, still hoping that love would mean safety forever. But love was never going to do that, because love isn't a contract. It's a mirror, and she mirrored your dependence back to you until she didn't. That's the moment most men break, when the mirror vanishes and they realize they've been loving not a woman, but their own reflection in her attention. You couldn't see that while she was still in your arms, because your brain wasn't asking, is this real? It was screaming, don't lose it. You weren't addicted to her. You were addicted to the feeling she gave you, validation, excitement, purpose, and that feeling was never love. It was anesthesia. So when she left, you didn't just lose her, you were forced to feel the parts of yourself you hadn't built on your own, the empty spaces you tried to fill with her presence, the wounds you tried to silence with her body. And now that she's gone, you can finally hear what those wounds were trying to say. Become whole. Not because she'll come back, but because you'll never mistake a woman for salvation again. Schopenhauer didn't give men comfort. He gave them clarity. He told you the truth no one else will, that your suffering is sacred, that it's not proof something went wrong, but proof you were finally forced to see life without illusions. He said men love with ideals, and when those ideals are shattered, The man is either broken or reborn. That's where you are now. You're not broken, you're bleeding clarity. You're watching the fog lift and realizing the pedestal you put her on was never hers to stand on. She's not your downfall. She's your teacher, not because she meant to teach you, but because her absence gave you the space to confront the truth. You can't find your worth in someone who can leave. You can't build your identity in someone else's emotional weather. You can't keep handing your soul to anyone who doesn't even ask to hold it. This is where it ends. Not the love, but the need to make love your identity. Not the pain, but the illusion that pain means weakness. The moment you stop trying to make her noble, you become sovereign, because now you don't need her to be right or wrong. You don't need her to be anything. You just need to become what you were always avoiding. A man who no longer worships the woman because he finally respects the truth. You didn't lose her. You lost the illusion of what she'd never be. You thought the pain was because she left, but that wasn't it. The pain came from something deeper, from the collapse of the image you built around her, the version of her that was going to stay, understand you, fight for you, be your peace. But she was never those things. She was never supposed to be. She was what she was, a woman, responding to the pull of her nature, and the version of her that you lost was never truly real. You didn't lose her. You lost the illusion of what she'd never be. And now you're here, staring at the ruins, not of love, but of projection. You handed her your soul like a key, then called it betrayal when she used the door to walk away. But let's be honest, you saw the signs, you felt the distance, you noticed the emotional shift. You just refused to believe that someone who once looked at you like you were everything could now look through you like you were nothing. And that's where the real suffering began. Not when she left, but when you refused to let go of the fantasy. She didn't ruin you. She revealed you. She showed you the part of you that still believed love meant safety, that loyalty meant permanence, that being chosen meant being whole. But Schopenhauer saw it clearly. Love does not override nature, and women are not here to complete men. They are here to reflect them, to test the strength of his center, to challenge the depth of his awareness, to mirror back the truth of who he really is beneath the mask. And when you start to see clearly, you realize she was never meant to save you. She was meant to wake you, to shake you out of the dream that a woman's love could make you whole, to tear down the emotional scaffolding you were using to avoid doing the real work within. So stop waiting for closure. Stop waiting for her to explain. Stop waiting for her to come back and validate your worth. That moment is never coming, and it's not supposed to, because what you really need is not her apology. It's your awakening. You weren't destroyed by her departure. You were freed by the destruction of your delusion. You thought she was your answer, but now you see she was just the mirror. And the man you thought she was in love with, that wasn't your true self. It was your performance. It was your emotionally dependent self. The self who still thought love was something to earn by being soft, consistent, always available. The self who still believed that being good was the same as being chosen. But being good isn't enough. And love doesn't stay for goodness. It stays for power, for polarity, for presence. And when those things fade, so does her connection. Now is the moment you reclaim your clarity, not to win her back, but to never lose yourself again. This is your turning point. This is where you become sovereign, not cold, not bitter, but awake. You can still love, but never again will you love blindly. Never again will you love from need. Never again will you love in a way that costs you your core. You don't have to hate her to move on. You just have to stop pretending she was something she never was. She wasn't your forever. She was your mirror, and the image she reflected forced you to grow or crumble. You've crumbled long enough. Now it's time to rise. So take the clarity, take the pain, and use it, because you weren't betrayed by her. You were betrayed by your need to believe she was more than her nature. And now that illusion is dead, so it's time you stopped grieving it.